welcome to Talking Youth Work. My name is Anita Silva, and together with Rui Branco, we interview experts and practitioners that have a say when it comes to innovation in youth work. This current series is funded by the project Inception of Learning, that is funded by the European Commission through the Erasmus Plus Youth Key Action 2 projects. This project aims to support youth workers, trainers, and educators in delivering quality learning experiences in the field of youth in the context of Generation Z and Generation Alpha. Today, we had the pleasure to talk with Dr. Ivan Ivanov. He is a professor, but also the director of the School for Young Leaders in North Macedonia. The aim of this school is to train young people to become future political, cultural, and economic leaders. And we talked about how these generations are showing up differently for leadership, how they bring curiosity, but maybe curiosity doesn't show up in the way that we expected in older generations. They come in a curious but pragmatic way, trying to understand how does knowledge apply to the challenges that they might face. We also talked about the importance of intergenerational dialogue, so that young people have references from leaders of the past and other people that has the lived experience of leadership to understand how they can improve and how they can reshape what leadership means. In the end, we talked also about how important it is for adults, youth workers, not to just keep taking decisions for young people, but actually to make sure that support is available for them and that responsibility is not removed, that young people still hold that accountability as well for their actions. And of course, maybe a bigger question, which is how can they connect their values to decision making? And maybe this is a challenge not just for young people, but for all of us. Well, with no further ado, we invite you to join the conversation. Let's talk youth work. Hello, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of Talking Youth Work. Hi, Rui. Where are you zooming from today?
I'm in the same place as usual, Carcavelos, near Lisbon.
And I'm very close to you too. I'm zooming from Lisbon. And today we have the pleasure to have Ivan Ivanov, a dear guest that will talk with us about leadership and young people. Hi, Ivan. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Where are you zooming from today?
I'm zooming from Skopje, from the capital, from Macedonia. I'm here in our offices of the International Central Alliance of Civilizations. So greetings to all from Macedonia.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we'll start right in. Today we're going to be talking about leadership and young people. What's your personal story that led you to this theme?
Well, my interest in this theme, it's both from my academic journey, let's say, and from my personal life as well. I grew up with believing that young people possess enormous potential, but I also believe that that potential does not automatically become influence, right? Young people today need opportunities, but more importantly, they also need encouragement, okay? Because we're also here to mention the importance of responsibility, and perhaps, on top of all, maybe most importantly, someone who will genuinely take their ideas seriously, okay? That will give importance to what they can bring to the table. So as a young scholar, I'm also teaching at International Balkan University. I'm teaching international politics and political science. I was always fascinated by the distance between what is knowledge and what is action, right? So universities, they can produce knowledge, okay? On the other hand, we have political institutions that are the ones that are making the decisions. We have the business sector that is creating and developing solutions, okay? Mm-hmm. And also we have the civil society, which is here to criticize, which is here to give suggestions. But those worlds that I just mentioned do not always communicate very well with one another. Mm-hmm. So my curiosity actually was to understand how we could connect them and how young people could basically become active participants in these processes rather just simply waiting for their turn. And this is still one of the questions that motivates me as a young person, because education should not only prepare young people to enter the market, right, to enter the labor market. It should prepare them for how to interpret the world, how to understand what is going on around us. When I was a student, when I was asked, what is the reason why you're studying this, for example, political science, I said, because I'm interested to understand the past in order to make plans and to predict the future, okay? And there are many challenges around us. But as I said, with those challenges, we have a lot of responsibilities, first and foremost, to improve our communities. And at the same time, my personal understanding of what leadership is has changed, okay? When I was younger, let's say during my high school days, during my years as a student, I imagined a leader as someone who is exceptionally confident, that someone who had all the answers, who could pursue the others, to follow. Today, through the years, through my formal and informal education, this assumption has changed, okay? Because I believe that today, leadership is mostly about listening. It should be, at least. And to understand the complexity, because we're living in a very complex world. I always like to refer to this Gramscian logic that was given in Anthony Gramsci's Prisoner's Notebook: when the old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born, it's time of morbid symptoms. So we are living actually in a world full of morbid symptoms. So it's a very complex world. And here is very important to create trust. It's very important to create mechanisms how we can bring this trust back and how we can help other people to discover, first and foremost, their own capacities. So this is why I'm interested in this topic, and I'm very much interested in this new form of youth leadership, because
So then I wanted to ask you, taking up on that, tell us about the School of Young Leaders. How does it work? What does it offer to young people?
Well, this is one of the main projects that we're doing right now, because the school is very personal to me, because it emerged from this idea by my father. My father at that time was the president of the state. So there was a sort of a mystification for that school, because everybody thought if this was started by a president of state, it has to be a political school, which is not, okay? Because he's also a professor. So when he entered politics, he asked himself a very simple question: what can a professor do in politics if not start his own school? So that's how 17 years ago, this idea emerged. And this year, we're going to have the 17th edition. So this project has grown over almost with 650 alumni now, because each year we accept only 40 participants from all over the world. So it was first a local one, but then it emerged as an international intensive training for leadership, okay? And the purpose was never, as I said, to create a school for politicians alone. The idea was to bring together promising young people, successful young people from different disciplines, from different countries, from different professions, from different cultural backgrounds, okay? Because, yes, leadership is needed in public institutions, but it's also needed in universities, in sports, in companies, in cultural organizations, in medicine, civil society, you name it, right? So we need leadership everywhere, right? So as I said, we have intensive training for young leaders that lasts for 2 months, actually. The first month is a mentorship program, and that mentorship program is being conducted online. What is very valuable to us that those mentors emerged from the Alumni Association. So they basically felt this is not an obligation or responsibility, but they simply wanted to give something back to the school. So they went through a whole process of mentorship by themselves, and they started to mentoring other participants as well. So I'm very grateful what they actually did. And then we have one month with online lectures, and then we have one intensive week in Ohrid. Ohrid is this beautiful lake, is the oldest in Europe, is the second deepest lake in the world.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, yes, it's gorgeous. You have an open invitation whenever you can to visit it. So
thank you.
Yeah, and we are very grateful not only for the scholars who basically contributed, because among the people that are connected with the school, We have people like the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who attended the school twice. We had the Czech President Václav Klaus, former Maltese President Kolejiro, almost all the former presidents from the region, the late Alex Salmond, the first Minister of Scotland. We had the Undersecretary General of the United Nations, Miguel Angel Moratinos from Spain. Mm-hmm. We also had very important, successful entrepreneurs. But I have to say, we had generals from Vermont, from the U.S. Army. We're in cooperation with Texas University from United States, Schwarzman scholars from Beijing, Nizami Ganjai from Azerbaijan.
Wow, impressive,
yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, we are trying to cover almost every continent because one of the key co-organizers of the school is the International Central Alliance of Civilizations, which is basically a result of what happened in UN in 2004 as a response to the thesis of Huntington that the clash of civilizations is inevitable. So they created basically a new narrative, which is Alliance of Civilizations. And we're trying to incorporate that as well, how to overcome all the prejudice and etc. So it's a very noble idea. Unfortunately, nobody's speaking about alliances, everybody is speaking about war.
Different times now.
Yeah. And if I have to add something, which is very important to us, was that our alumni association was invited to the general audience of the late Pope Francis, because Pope Francis sent us a welcome letter for opening remarks for the 15th edition of the School Leader, and the topic there was moral leadership. So our alumni recognize him as the moral leaders of today's world. So we were invited to this wonderful audience in Vatican, where we basically gave him the award of being the moral leader of today's world. And truly, it was very interesting how the young people are not detecting any politicians to be the leader, the moral leaders, okay? So one of them was Novak Djokovic. At that time, Novak Djokovic were very popular because he was refusing to get vaccinated. So basically, they liked this rebellious spirit that he had, and Pope Francis, of course, right? So yeah, for 17 years.
So let me pick up on that, what you just said, that you had 650 alumni until now. Yeah. How would you describe these new generations you're working with now? Do you notice differences as time goes by, and what surprises you about them now?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Here we're mostly focusing on Gen Z, right? So I believe it might not be fair to compare each generation with the previous one, because Gen Z it has its own personality. But it's not one personality, because it's distributed across millions of people, right? So, but more or less, I recognize certain patterns, okay? And one of the things that surprises me is that how the young people today, they appear less curious in a classical academic sense, but they're more pragmatic in this very unusual way, okay? So they often want to know immediately, how can I use this? Okay, will this help my career? How can I turn this idea into a project? What are the practical results that can come out from this podcast, conversation, whatever it is? Okay, and if I can use my personal experience as a lecturer, I sometimes miss the pleasure, because I consider myself being part of the analog generation, but also the digital. I'm still listening to music through my vinyls. I'm still reading books, right? And this is something that my father basically inspired me to do. And on the other hand, yeah, we are all having our cell phones. They are part of this AI world and etc. And this was mentioned by Hermann Hesse as well. It's very difficult to those generations that are in this bridge, okay, between the old and the new. And sometimes, as I said, I miss this pleasure of exploring a question simply because it's interesting, okay? Because curiosity does not always need immediate return of the investment, if we can say. Because some of the most important intellectual discoveries, projects, products, right? They begin with probably a useless question. Yeah, with a useless question, right? And I miss those useless questions. And here in the Mediterranean, you know this pretty well, during summer, all these chats, discussions over a wine, over a tapas, whatever it is. They're very productive. But also I understand why the young people now are pragmatic, because they're growing up in a very different conditions. with a permanent uncertainty. Probably the world was always uncertain, but now we are in touch with this uncertainty through the media, through the social networks, and it is creating anxiety to us, right? Not only to the new generation, but to the older ones as well. So, because our generation, the Gen Z, they have seen economic crisis. They went through a pandemic. I mean, we have to understand this: wars, technological disruption, I don't know, you name it, okay? And they have been told that they must improve, that they must constantly improve themselves, okay? They should develop new skills, they should remain competitive, new markets are being opened, many professionals from the past probably will disappear, so they have to adapt. So it's not surprising that they want to be useful, okay? And the main question that they're asking themselves is whether I can be useful. And
where do I fit, right?
Yeah, if they're fitting, yeah, exactly. Because their pragmatism is, maybe I'm wrong, but I see their pragmatism as a survival strategy, okay? How to survive in this world, okay? And the danger is that the education, the formal, let's say, education is becoming too transactional. Meaning, I will give you my, I will give you my attention, and you will give me the credentials and a contact or an opportunity, right? And
the learning takes second place in that case.
Yeah, because they're seeing education as a qualification, okay, not as an education, right? So what happens? We lose this deeper purpose of education, okay, which is in a way development of critical reasoning, judgment, character, and to understand with the others as simply as a human beings, okay. And sometimes I'm blaming us as lecturers because we have to adapt to their needs, right? These are new generations. They're audiovisual generations. They're being born with the mobile phone in their hands. Okay, these ex-cathedras are all forms of providing a lecture with a PowerPoint presentation behind you. It's not working anymore. Okay, if you cannot keep their attention, you're becoming also useful. So we have to adapt. We have to understand, because I was growing up with a father who is a professor, and I'm entering a discussion with him that this is not the same generation when you were a professor, right? And we cannot blame the young people. Okay. This is their world. Sometimes, we are becoming lost in their own world, okay? And from there, I can see that there's a strength in this generation, okay? Because once they believe that an issue is real, that one issue is relevant, they immediately want to act.
They go all in.
Yeah, exactly. And if I may add, they're less impressed by titles. And they want to be more authentic, okay? They quickly detect language and, I don't know, the institutional voice, okay, that says, what are you actually doing, okay? So I believe, and that's why, if I may just add, that this year's topic of the School for Young Leaders is New World, New Leadership, New Pragmatism, okay? Because we want to examine how ideals can be translated into results without losing their substance, their moral substance. So,
and that's something that I was listening to you, and that's really a struggle for these younger generations, because as you were saying, the pragmatism can turn into the quick fixes, and some of the, let me put this in quotes, leaders that we have in our days are the ones pointing to the quick fix, to the attention-catching phrase. But they're also leading, but they're not leading in my concept of leadership, like you were saying, based on moral values, on virtues, on wisdom, courage, discipline, justice, like the Stoic virtues. It's important to educate in those things, and all these things that we're discussing, they're not quick fixes. So my question is, how can you, in the leadership world, what is your experience turning the long, deep learning sexier, for the lack of a better word, that also satisfies that need for pragmatism?
Yeah,
that's a big challenge.
It's a big challenge. I'm so glad that you mentioned the Stoics. I wrote my master dissertation on Stoicism, actually new Stoicism. And I strongly believe that we need not only Stoicism, we need skepticism as well. Sometimes we're too confident in what is our stance, okay? Skepticism is, to be skeptical is the essence of everything, okay? That doesn't mean this extreme form that there is no truth at the end of the way. but you have to be constantly skeptical about the things around you when you're making your judgment. And the stoicism, of course. I mean, the most important thing, the patience. That unfortunately, I can not see this in the new generation. They're not patient. Okay, if I have to be critical on something, and going back to what you just said about the pragmatism, and that I believe that the question is not whether young people should be idealistic or pragmatic, because we need to overcome this false choice. Okay, because idealism without being able to implement the things that you want to implement is purely just a performance, right? And on the other hand, when you're pragmatic or you want to use your pragmatism towards something that is good, if you apply that without the values that you mentioned, or even more importantly, the virtues that you also mentioned, this is pure opportunism, right? And we see this, right? So this new pragmatism should mean having ambitious values, okay, but building, how to say, credible pathways towards them. And I also strongly believe this in intergenerational dialogue. I always use this phrase of Sir Isaac Newton. He said, like, I can see maybe my generation, he wrote this in this letter, so I will paraphrase, I cannot recall the exact word, but he said, I can look further only because I'm sitting on shoulders of giants, okay? And there are giants around us a lot, you know? And we sometimes speak about generations as we were competing political parties, okay? Right? Boomers against millennials, millennials against Gen Z. And I don't know, for me, it's not productive, okay? Because the older generation have experience, they have the institutional memory, they have the lessons learned mostly because of the failures, right? Unfortunately, you know, especially here in the Balkans, we are repeating the failures and we're repeating the mistakes from the past. As Hegel said, what we learn from history is that we do not learn anything from history, right? But the new generation have this new instinct, I believe, new technological fluency, right? And they have this ability to question practices that older people have stopped noticing. Okay, so going back to the idea that the new generation is facing with polycrisis, okay, I believe that this intergenerational dialogue should not only mean that older people are lecturing young people about patience, what we just mentioned, especially in the Stoicism, nor should it mean that young people are dismissing everything that is inherited from the past. It should be a genuine exchange in which both sides are willing to change the world in the way they want to change and to listen. We lost the ability to listen, you know. We are just having monologues. And I'm following politics, you know, when you see any multilateral institution like the UN, for example, which unfortunately I'm a strong supporter of multilateralism, but unfortunately I can see that all these clubs of dialogue are becoming clubs of monologue, you know. Probably have this, you know, in the Mediterranean, everywhere, like you just want to share your arguments. You're not willing to listen to the others. You will be satisfied only when you say the things you want to say. And here I detect the main problem. We should go back to this ability, and this is also related to Stoicism, right? To be patient and to hear the other, to listen to the others.
And I totally agree with you. And you said it in the beginning that not only you train for leadership, managerial skills, let's say, but very much to listen. And I wanted to ask you about that because a lot of the traditional leadership training is built on authority or hierarchy. Does that still hold with these new generations, this idea, this very vertical idea of leadership? And how do you teach listening? How do you work that into leadership?
Yeah, that's a very good question, an important one. You know, hierarchy will never disappear. You know, it's here to stay. Name it. From universities, government, companies, you know, they need structure, which is a good thing. I believe in structures, okay? Because structures also means responsibility. It means mechanisms. How else you're going to make decision, right? We need these structural mechanisms to make a decision. And a complete horizontal organization frequently sounds attractive, until a difficult decision must be made. And nobody knows who is accountable. So probably the right question that we should ask ourselves is not whether hierarchy exists, but the question probably is how authority can be earned and how this authority later can be exercised. Okay. And when I was a student, one of the first lessons that we had was to make a difference between where is legality, where is legitimacy. Okay. And legitimacy is very important, which is something related to this authority. When I'm entering my classroom, I'm asking my students, why are you listening to me now? Who am I? Okay. For you, I'm nobody. Usually first lecture. Do I represent a certain authority? How do I earn your legitimacy towards me in order to respect my authority? Because I'm representing an institution here. There's a university behind me. Maybe you will not agree with what I'm saying now, which I always love to, because I want young people to question authorities. Okay. I don't want them to believe in everything that they hear. Okay. Because previous models, often they assume that authority will come automatically to you. And it will come automatically with you because it's related to a certain position. Okay, I'm the director, therefore you should listen to me. I'm the professor, and you have to listen to me. Okay, I believe that the younger generations are much less willing to accept that logic. And I agree with them. They should question, because sometimes we're having a problem with false authorities. Okay, because for the young people, a title may give you a sort of a formal power, but it's not giving you credibility, because this credibility should come from competence, from consistency, from, for me, most importantly, honesty. Okay, how you treat other people. Okay, because young people, I mentioned, maybe they're less curious, but they observe everything. They observe whether leaders apply the same standards to themselves that they apply to everyone else. And I believe that they notice very quickly when a certain, entity, organization speaks about openness, but on the other hand, it punishes the disagreement, right? So I believe that leadership is becoming less about command. It's becoming more important when it's being related to what I said at the beginning, the legitimacy. Okay, because I have to involve a little bit of politics here, because I'm in political theory. I grew up with reading Aristotle. When I was a small kid, I did not understand anything. That's why it was more challenging for me. But I consider myself as Aristotelian in terms of what he wrote in metaphysics centuries ago. What is politics? What are the ethics and the moral for the individuals? That should be politics for the community. Meaning, if you're not a moral person, if you do not follow ethical guidance, you should not deal with politics. You don't belong there. And this is the main problem. Maybe I'm a big idealist, but even the people that are not following politics, even the people that are not interested in politics, they have to understand that they are part of the political sphere. Right? And all the decisions that these leaders are making are for them. And, there's a very worrying data that says that only 2.3% of the young people under 30 are being represented in the world parliaments, that they are parliamentarians. So we're making decisions for the young people, for having the young people just as a meal on the table, not as a guest sitting on the table, right? So I believe in this collaborative leadership. Does not always mean asking, 50 people to vote on every email or whatever it is. It means explaining the purpose, okay, creating a meaningful participation and accepting responsibility for the final outcome. I want leaders that can be held accountable for. I want a leader, a politician, a director, whatever it is, to say, hey guys, I was wrong. Okay, I tried, I did my best, I failed, accept my apology, let's move further. Unfortunately, we're suffering from egomaniacs, that will never admit that they did something wrong, that they will try to pursue that their decision is the best and everything else is just a world full of all uncertain alternatives. But yes, I believe that the young people, they want voice, but because of this pragmatism, they want clarity, okay? and they dislike authoritarian leadership, right? They're equally frustrated with that.
Because you say that the young people are not represented, and my question is, are they interested in being in politics? That's something that I struggle to find. It's they have voices, but also the political side has been tainted with low moral values, corruption, and also it's like they needed to have their voices heard, but it's not very aspirational to be a politician in our days. So how do you manage this?
I believe that the end goal of politics is to make the lives of people better. That's it. It's not for a personal gain. Again, I'm saying sometimes I'm so very utopian and very idealistic, but I do believe in that. I was raised like that, okay? And I have to share something personal here, when my father ended his term as a politician, right? Because I was becoming more into politics, I said, don't go there, right? I mean, I believed that there is still a certain virtue there. Unfortunately, there is not. Politics, unfortunately, became a very filthy, dirty place, even if you have an idea. Because Erich Fromm, the famous sociologist, wrote something in this famous book, Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. And he was making comparison between the optimists and the pessimists. And he said the optimists are not taking any actions because they believe everything is perfectly fine. And on the other hand, you have the pessimists that are not taking any actions because they said nobody will allow me to do something. And they're in a vacuum. Nobody's acting, right? And you're right. The young people that are pessimists, and here in the Balkans, we are realists with, we are basically optimists with experience. Does not always mean pessimist. It means more to be more realistic. And around me, I see young people that are full of fresh ideas, that are full of very progressive ideas, and they're asking the same question that you asked me. Will I change something? Will somebody allow me to do something? Okay. Yeah, we can identify the problem, but sometimes the politicians are keeping the problem alive so just they can keep the position here, right? They don't need solutions, unfortunately. These all forms of leadership, if I may, to be more clear, okay? So now we have the knowledge. I mean, the whole knowledge is just a click away, right? You have all the information. You can reach any kind of book. You don't need all these old school libraries, so you can, approach any book or any knowledge. Still here, we need, the professors, we need the mentors in order to guide you, to give you thought maps, to come to a solution in order to make a more pragmatic solution. And yet all of this is here, okay? All of that is here. But the main question is, for what is worth, right? Still we have a monopolization of the decision-making in politics by people that just are becoming more, as I said, egomaniacs, and they want to keep full control on everything. Because we spoke about education, knowledge, leadership is becoming less about possessing all the knowledge, and it's becoming more about recognizing where that knowledge exists. And the strong leaders, this famous explanation, I think it was Michael Mann who popularized this. He says, hard times create strong men create good times. Good time, they create soft man, weak man, weak man creates, again, hard times. How we can break this vicious circle, okay? We are probably in this phase when weak people are creating these difficult times, because the strongest leaders are no longer necessarily the loudest people in the room. Among the young people, I see people that are people capable of making the room intelligent, okay? You don't have to speak loud. You don't have to yell, okay? You don't have to just have your monologue, how to connect the dots, how to be more pragmatic. This was brilliantly, I don't know if we have time, but this was brilliantly mentioned by Kishore Mabuyani in this famous book. I cannot recall the name of the book. They asked him, how did you make Singapore such a successful example, knowing, the past of Singapore, this decadence that survived these very hard times for us. And he said, the three principles of Prime Minister Lee of Singapore were pragmatism, meritocracy, and honesty. If you can combine all these three, meaning it's not important, going back to your question, it's not important, who do you know? So to enter politics or to enter some, position, is more important, what do you know? What can you bring, to the table? Pragmatism. Maybe you will not always find the right answer or right solution, but at least you will learn how not to repeat some mistakes and how to trace that solution. And honesty, zero corruption. Young people want transparency. They want to know where their money goes, right? They want to know what are we spending. They're saying, we cannot. Recently, there is a great festival now in UK. Eric Clapton should perform. I don't know. And they canceled because they cannot accumulate enough funds. And usually in the past was supported by the government. Said you're spending, on military purposes, on security, exactly, and you cannot nurture the culture that you basically created all this soft power on. What are we speaking about? Education, reforms, etc. You can see how progressive economies are turning into militarization, etc. And we are losing the young people in this way. Okay, we are basically not honest to them. We are not open to them. And this is just because of selfish leadership.
Absolutely. I share a lot of those critiques with you. And I think we as well, we are here waving like, yep, check. And this is something that I think worries us as educators, as youth workers, and our listeners are mostly youth workers, which is, young people having less and less, well, I don't know if it's less and less, I don't want to generalize like that, but having some proeminent bad examples of what politics looks like, proeminent references that are not the ideal way of seeing what you just said, honest, transparent politics happening. Mm. Missing those references, being born in a world where this is what politics is. And so not having those references. And at the same time, being very unsatisfied. And there's a previous guest, Jelena, who is a researcher in youth politics in Europe. And she was saying, well, it's not that young people don't like politics. They don't like the politics that they're being handed. Yeah. And I think all of us share that feeling, not just young people in many ways. So my question to you is, knowing that they don't have these references and coming into a political system that might already have a lot of flaws, like you were describing, a lot of little space for good ideas and for good debates and for constructive debates that have the people's interests at the center. But at the same time, being also born into the attention economy, where things are about views and likes and about who is successful on the internet and about social media, all of that. To make my question short is, what would you say for our youth workers that what can we all do to prepare our young people to be good leaders and to take the lead? I'm not even saying to become politicians, to take the lead in something, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, in their homes, in their groups of friends. How could youth workers beyond your school, how can we all help young people lead in this world?
$1 million question, right?
Yeah, right. I know. Maybe an unfair one.
Just to make one analogy with what...
We'll transfer the million, then you answer.
Yeah, exactly.
What you mentioned earlier, exactly. I was just you mentioned Jelena, who was your previous guest, exactly, because, when I'm teaching, let's say, democracy and distribution, I can see how people are frustrated and students are frustrated, not what democracy really represents. They're frustrated how this is being applied. Because 110 years ago, Robert Michel said that the destiny of every democracy is to end up as an oligarchy, or a tyranny of heterogeneous minorities. But let's stick to the first part, they're becoming oligarchies. The revolt of the young people is against the elite. There's nothing wrong with democracy, right? It's a perfect form of governing, right? But when you're misusing that, and when democracy are becoming what Robert, I believe it was his first name, Crouch, wrote in 2001, post-democracy, meaning How do I understand democracy? I just go out and vote, and that's it. With this, I fulfilled my democratic capacities and my democratic obligations, which is incorrect. To which extent we are engaged in public debates, to which extent our voice is being heard. It's not enough just to choose our representatives in the parliament if we cannot influence the process, the decision-making process afterwards, right? And this is very worrying, okay? I mean, yeah, the main question is, are we living in true democracies, right? Okay, this is another topic, but going back, I mean, to the first question. Yeah. The first thing the youth workers can do, and this is my humble opinion, is to give young people genuine responsibility, okay? Because we sometimes create youth maybe not activities, but let's keep them that. We're keeping youth activities in which adults make all the important decisions and young participants are invited to choose the color of the poster, let's say. Then we can say that, they have been empowered. So young people can, and they should, I mean, immediately feel the difference between participation and decoration, if I can put it that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and tokenism, of course.
They should participate, going back to what I said about these post-democratical conditions, right? Yeah, we just go behind the ball, we are voting for someone, and then that's it. We're abstaining from all the processes, even the ones that are interested in politics because they're pessimists, right? So give them a real budget, a real problem, give them a, deadline and responsibility towards the real people. Okay, let them make decisions and allow them to fail, okay? How else they're going to learn? I mean, look, the previous generation, they keep on failing and they're surviving, they're ongoing. There's nothing wrong for that. That's why I mentioned the giants. We should recognize the importance of the old leadership, okay? But when you combine the wisdom and experience and the mistakes that they made with the enthusiasm, pragmatism, and this new fresh force, we can come up with a solution, because failure is important, okay? But failure is important provided by the idea that, it is followed by reflection. Because we often protect young people from failure, okay, and then expect them to be resilient. Sometimes, I have parents that are coming, imagine, to universities, another high school to university, asking why their son, daughter, whatever it is, failed the exam. So they're perfect kids, how can they fail? Okay, let's do an overview of the exam. Let's see. Because, sometimes, especially when you're a parent and when you are, having the most difficult and most beautiful position and work that you can have in your life, is that if your kid is not doing something, okay, to say, okay, listen, either you can improve this or try doing something else, okay? So this resilience is not learned through motivational slogans, okay? It's learned through encouraging them to enter in this difficult sphere, in this environment when support is available, but the responsibility is not removed, right? Mm-hmm. And second thing that I would like to add and to mention is to teach them listening as a leadership skill, because leadership programs, okay, like what we are trying to achieve in our academia, in our leadership school, they devote a great deal of time to public speaking, okay, which is very valuable, but not enough time to asking good questions, hearing criticisms, and understanding people whose experience are different from our own. You know what Voltaire said, okay? Maybe I will not agree with you, but I will fight to death for your right to say what you want to say, okay? So a leader who speaks well, it can impress the room, right? Wow, I mean, this is a true leadership. Okay? But a leader who listens well may transform it, right? And we need to transform ourselves. Zygmunt Bauman said that we are living in a period of crisis of ages. And in order to have a transition, he said, not transformation. In order to have a transition, you need a point A and point B. From what are we running away from towards what? I'm afraid that first, we don't have a very clear point B. But on the other hand, it's not only point B, it's B, C, D, because it's a world full of uncertain alternatives, okay? And I believe that we also, to overcome this, because he said why he mentioned this as a crisis of ages, because it's not about what should be done, because easily we are detecting the problems, but who will conduct these changes, okay? Going back to the importance of new leadership, okay? How to mentorship the young people and to design two-way exchange, okay? I believe in this, and I'm always sharing this with my student. There is one famous book, Nausea, by Jean-Paul Sartre, right? And in this book, the main protagonist, the Marquis Roublon, is traveling and he's trying to understand what happened with the attempt of assassination of the Pope, nevertheless. And he's approaching this very strange situation in this small village. And what is the strange situation? There is a person, pantheist, that is refusing to accept Christianity as his religion. And there are priests that are surrounding him, convincing him to accept Christianity so they can baptize him and so he can live this world as a proper Christian. And this person was very close to Diderot, to the philosophers, and he's refusing that. And this Marquis Roublon, he's entering the room and says, can I spend some time with him? Says, yeah, be our guest. I mean, we're desperate. I mean, it is what it is. And the Marquis entered the room at 3:00. At 5, the person accepted Christianity as his official religion. At 7, he was baptized. At 9, he died as a proper Christian. And the priests were amazed. They surrounded the Marquis and said, wow, I mean, you have such a powerful force to convince people, How did you convince him? And the Marquis replied, I did not convince him in anything. I just frightened him with hell. So sometimes, that's why I mentioned skepticism at the beginning. It's good to be skeptical. It's good to explore alternatives, right? Because unfortunately, the narrative of the politicians, if you're not following what we are saying, hell is coming, right? No, I mean, as I said, solutions are emerging from useless conversation, from useless questions that will come with your brainstorming eventually, right? So we need more hope, right? We need more hope. Absolutely. Because there are two forces that can mobilize people, fear and hope. Unfortunately, now fear is dominating, and fear is the tool that is mobilizing people against the enemies, We are coming again to this Kantian, not Kantian, Carl Schmitt wrote this about this logic of politics, friends and enemies.
Yeah, it's very
not binary, right?
Yeah, it's very binary, and it doesn't represent the complexity and that we need to help people navigate towards the future.
Exactly,
absolutely.
Exactly.
And the thing that it makes total sense what you just said, because when you're fearful, you're not listening.
Yeah, exactly. You're not listening. You just want to survive. Yeah, you just want to survive.
It's a big thing.
Yeah,
I think we underestimate hope a lot in the sense of what the role it has in change, in social change, in political change, in narratives.
Exactly. But listen, I'm sorry for interrupting. Now we can use the chatbots for everything, right? Please ask any chatbot to analyze the statements and speeches of the politicians and count how many times the word war or fear was mentioned and how many times the word hope was mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're creating a narrative. Absolutely.
It's becoming, we're getting used to that.
Absolutely. So we are almost at the end of our conversation. But as usual, we always have a question that comes from a previous guest, and Rui has that in front of him. So here's a challenge for you.
The question is, what's a puzzle or a problem you are working on right now?
Personally, or through the work that we're doing with the organizations and institutions?
You pick and choose.
I really like this Chinese approach that the symbol for problem is also a challenge, right? It's not always a problem; it's a challenge, right? That we're learning from. And that's why we need to be pragmatic. The main challenge that we're working on is how to connect values or virtues with decisions. I mean, I like very much, to influence the young people that when you're making a decision, you have to follow the values. You have to follow your inner principles and the clarity of your own soul, right? Unfortunately, our souls are now, undermined. We are forgetting about the meaning of being valuable, virtuous human being, okay, in creating these relations with the others. We're becoming too egotistical, right? We are becoming too egoistic. Individualism is the essence of the Western civilization, but this individualism, as who said, Taylor, I believe it was Taylor, is becoming egoism. There's no empathy. This is main challenge and main problem, that I see. We should nurture the empathy towards the others. Keep the pragmatism, but empathy. Because it is easy to ask young people to list values such as honesty, inclusion, responsibility. The real question is what happens when values conflict. Would you delay a project to include more voices, or would you reject funding from a questionable source, let's say? Or would you defend an unpopular, team member, okay? Or even more importantly, would you admit publicly, as a mission, that your organization, your party, whatever, made a mistake? So I believe that, we should bring values and virtues back on the table, because we are living in a world that is being described as a post-world, meaning post-truth, post-capitalism, post-democracy. Everything is post. We need something now, okay, something new, a new paradigm that will keep the good things from the previous attempts and will create a combined model, because I always believe that the solutions are coming from combined models, okay? And those combined model will give us the right answers for the future. But I beg the young people to be more curious, to be more polite to each other, okay? This is something that we're lacking, to be more polite, to listen one to another, and to be more, to nurture the empathy, as I said. I believe that this is what we're needing, because technology, AI, all of that is here, but technology and AI will never learn you to be, a human being. They will never nurture empathy, right? So this is something that we should work with our inner selves, okay? And to try to keep our souls as clean as possible in these very difficult times.
Yeah, because the narrative is the finite game, and we're playing an infinite game. And that's why solutions A, B, C, D, E are possible, because you're not playing a finite game. But the message is, if you have something, I cannot be happy for you, because if you have something, it means I don't have something. And it can be both true that you have and I have. We can both be happy at the same time.
If I may add, this is something that I'm always, repeating, and I learned this from my father. We should be happy with the things that we have, not with the things that we don't have. Because if we do not appreciate the things that we have, probably going to lose them. Yeah. If we're always striving for that doesn't mean not to be ambitious, okay? Mm-hmm. But he's a famous poet and musician, he said, sometimes you have to lose what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And if we can lose what we don't have, then probably this contemplation will give us some answers.
And that's also a Stoic exercise, to look at things that you might lose.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Seneca that whenever he went to say goodbye to his kids, that it might be the last time.
Exactly. And we should be grateful for every opportunity, for every new day.
Yeah.
Well, we are now really grateful, because our conversation is getting to the end here, and we want to appreciate so much what you shared already with us, and we are very grateful for that. We still have something to ask from you, which is, which question would you offer to our next guest without knowing who he or she is? What would be an interesting question, do you think we should ask about this topic of young people, new generations?
That's a good one. I really like your concept. Probably what I would like to ask is, what is one thing that the young people or the youth world need to stop doing? Mm-hmm. Not because it failed in the past, but because probably young people have already moved beyond it.
Wow, good question.
I would like to go in that direction. What they should stop doing it, okay? Because they're already moved. That is beyond it. So probably I would like to go in that direction, if it's okay.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think it's a very good question.
Thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your insights and your experience. And thank you for leading this School of Young Leaders, which is a need and is probably something that can and should be replicated in other places as well. Thank you so much for your work and for being with us today.
The pleasure, it's all mine. Thank you so much for what are you doing. I mean, I was introduced to your platform and I strongly support your initiative, and it was such a pleasure, and I enjoyed every second. I enjoyed your questions, I enjoyed your concept. You're a great company, so I hope maybe we can see in person anytime in future. I love Portugal. I mean, so I hope
You should
Just come.
I love it. I mean, especially Cascais, right?
That's where I live, near Cascais. Yeah.
Seriously. Oh,
There you go.
I
Amazing.
live in the middle. Imagine if you live from Lisbon to Cascais, I live in the middle.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I'm a huge James Bond fan. The first thing that I did want to go to the Hotel Estoril. Yeah. And have the James Bond cocktail.
Martini.
But it's beautiful.
Shaken, not stirred.
You're truly blessed with your country. So yeah.
You too. We've been to Ohrid and we loved it also.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. I mean, I can send an invitation. Unfortunately, the calls for this School for Young Leaders is already called. We already selected the candidates, but we have, a bunch of different kind of mentorship programs and a lot of master classes that we're conducting online. So maybe you can share with your viewers and listeners. So maybe they
absolutely. You send us the links and we will also share.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do that after this. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are not so young to join. But
No. We'll come as lecturers, right? I mean, now you'll come as lecturers.
Yes, 50 is the new 20.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This podcast was brought to you by Team Mais, recorded and edited by Rui Branco for the international project Inception of Learning, financed by the Erasmus Plus program. Our great partners for this project are the associations Fundacja Instytut Innowacji from Poland, Jasna Idnina from North Macedonia, and Odd Socks from Montenegro.